That seems fair to me.
Fairness isn't the
really
issue.
think
If
you're
anything,
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make a judgment on what fair is.
Unacceptable by any reason. You can't.
Donnybrook is made possible through the generous support of the members of KETC.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us, and thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as you do week in and week out. Let's welcome back Wendy Wiese, the media veteran who took the week off last week. We're so glad you're back, Wendy. So we have Bill McClellan as well from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Mr. St. Louis Magazine, Ray Hartmann, is with us, along with Alvin, Reid from the St. Louis American, STLmag.com, and beyond. And, you know, it's the first time we've had a governor in the state of Missouri impeached, so we'll broach this topic again. But it won't be the only thing we discuss this week, Alvin. And as of Friday at 6:30, the governor, I guess the impeachment proceedings began. And then early on Monday, we found that the prosecuting attorney for Jackson County, Kansas City, is going to look into possible criminal charges. We don't know if she'll file any. Former panelist on this program, Scott Fawn, testified yesterday that he did provide the attorney for the ex-husband $120,000 in cash and said it was his money. But I guess what we're all looking at right now is impeachment. And I think it's a fait accompli that Governor Eric Greitens will be impeached. What say you?
Well, real quick, I will say that last week we were talking about the special prosecutor and who on earth would take that case. And I said, like, I'd take it if I had the option to not charge him with a crime, which is exactly what happened. I think the Jackson County prosecutor
Will not?
Will not. I will
don't
not.
think so either.
Okay. And I also don't think the governor will be impeached.
Wow.
This is the show me state, and the legislature tours will have to show me. And I think there's a lot of tough talk and a lot of brazen talk about what they're going to do and he's got to go and all that. And when it comes time to vote, I think some of the people that are saying he's gone, I'm voting to impeach him, will vote to not impeach him. I do not think they will back up the bluster. He will not be impeached.
well, more than that, Alvin, I don't think he should be impeached. I mean, I'm not a fan of the governor in any way, shape, or form, but overthrowing an election, you know, I think you need something more than the guy's a jerk or the guy's legally separated from the truth or whatever they're getting him on. I don't think he should be impeached.
I think you're wrong because I don't hear anybody in Jefferson City defending the guy.
I know.
So not the Democrats, and I haven't heard the Republicans defending him. So when it comes down to voting, I think they're going to say, you know what? We're not getting rid of the governor. We're just letting the 7 esteemed jurists take a look at it. So they're kind of punting when they impeach, aren't they?
I think I'm beginning to think that Alvin is correct and that they don't have the political stomach for it. If you had an invasion of privacy or anything that sounded or looked like blackmail or you know, bullying of a sexual nature, that's one thing. But that's not going to happen. And so I think that the lawmakers in Jefferson City will not have. I just don't think they'll have the.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
Wait, I think they have the grounds to impeach him based on the mailing list and on and on and on. And I made a mistake and I lied and blah blah blah. All that. I think they have the grounds to impeach him. I don't think they have the
stomach.
guts.
They don't have
right.
the stomach
They don't
for
have
it.
the guts to impeach him.
I think they will impeach him because I think there's a political imperative in the Republican Party, and of course I've made some of my fellow liberals mad by saying on this show that I don't think that the Democrats should accommodate them. The old Napoleon thing, when your enemies are tearing themselves apart, don't interfere with them. And I think that politically speaking, it may sound crass, I think to your point, Bill, yes, you could make a really solid case that there's not enough to impeach him, but we don't have much history on this, and Judy Moriarty was impeached and was impeached and removed for what looks like a parking ticket today. I mean, she was impeached and removed for backdating her son's filing for state rep, which next to the dark money and all the other stuff that goes on today is nothing. And Bill Webster,
Judy Moriarty didn't have have Ed Dowd and Scott Rosenberg.
I'm making the point that
right. No,
you don't need. And Bill Webster went to prison for misusing his postal machine.
Right.
In the postal, the
copy
machine in his office.
Era of
no,
Trump.
I'm saying that to Bill's point, historically, when people have gotten in trouble, it has not been on major stuff. I personally think that while he, on any moral ground, he deserves to be impeached, I actually hope he doesn't, because
I know.
Let me say this about Moriarty. That you might say a parking ticket, but she was Secretary of State, and that was malfeasance in office, something that she did in her office. Where with Governor Greitens, they're trying to get him on really moral turpitude, and I think that
But
they're
not
going to
the
think about that and go,
database,
boy,
though,
that's
Bill.
a tough standard.
But I
not
must
the
tell you,
database.
guys, I mean, are you telling me that the legislature spent all this time for the first case, which was looking into the invasion of privacy and subpoenaing all these witnesses and take that testimony and the transcripts? Then they go into the donor list and a whole nother report, and it's all going to be for naught?
Yes, and yes.
I think no, and I think
And-
they
and
will
they-
impeach him. And the reason I brought up Moriarty is they don't need to have a huge standard. And I actually think that the mission continues stuff, which actually did include time in office in terms of how the reporting was and some of the apparent, impropriety, that was on the watch as governor. And I think,
And this wasn't.
and I think they have probably a stronger case based on the Moriarty precedent and some of this other to do it on that than they do on the sex stuff.
Well, I
And
don't
think they
know.
have both.
It sure
I'm
looks
just saying,
like
I
to
think they're gonna
me
do
that
it.
the forces are aligned against this man like never before. I mean, you got Democrats and Republicans who are all agreeing. It's not even a controversial issue within Jefferson City. I mean, who's the defender of the governor?
But the irony of ironies will still always be for me that if he does somehow get off of the grappling hook that he's currently dangling, that Scott Fawn actually had a role in it, releasing him. I mean, taking the focus away from Greitens and everything that was going on, and the fact that his defense team has been able to say, hey, what's going on over here? Look over there at the shiny object.
I just think they'll check it out. When it comes to a vote,
all right,
won't do it.
Alvin, I want to ask you about a case where a St. Louis police officer, Brian Jost, was accused of manipulating his timesheet and getting paid for time that he didn't actually serve. So he was acquitted this week by the judge after a superior officer said, he was on a special undercover team and we wanted him to kind of make it look like he was working certain hours when he wasn't, because we didn't want people to know where he was. He was acquitted by the judge. How'd you feel about that?
Well, we know he wasn't at work, and he was charging us to get paid. This is ridiculous. The judge listed all the reasons that he probably broke the law and then acquitted him. On top of the fact, what judge tells a defendant that, all right, and this is all lies, and if it was just manipulating and covering up, then you got away with it. Bang. Walk out the judge.
That's not what the judge
Like Charlie said, though, that Major Dan Howard, who I don't know, told the judge that I wanted sketchy reports with vague times, and so you can't really convict the working officer of making the kind of report that his major is saying we wanted him to make.
And I think the judge's ruling made perfect sense. We have a standard. You have to prove someone's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He basically said there was a lot of questions. It was very questionable, and he was very candid about it. But Judge Hedderbach, I think, who's a good judge, looked at it and said the state didn't make its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's our system.
Now, that's our police officers as defendants system.
No, it's our system. I mean, I'm not.
Right.
It's our system.
How many
They
people
gotta
sit in
prove
jail
it.
on less evidence than
Oh,
that?
I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm
Well,
saying
I
in this
am.
case, I understand what you're saying, but in this case, if they didn't prove it, they didn't prove it.
Yeah, see, Alvin, it would have been different if his superiors had testified that, hey, nobody is supposed to, mess around with those timesheets. Quite the opposite. They said, we encourage this guy to mess around with his timesheets.
All right, okay. Next time somebody gets shot or whatever, and the superiors come in and said, it was all good. I don't want to hear any argument. Well, his superior said it was all good.
I'm
so
not arguing
bye.
that the system is fair. I'm saying in this particular case,
It's the
to go
system.
after the judge, I'm saying, of course there's no justice in the city. That's not the point.
Really?
The point of
Ray.
There's
There's
no
no
justice.
justice in the
no,
city?
for the people, the average guy in the street, there's very little justice
Oh,
in the
come
criminal
on,
justice
that's a
system.
whole nother
That
thing.
I'm not disagreeing with. I'm talking about in this
disagree with
case.
that statement.
Sort of
I'm just saying
overreach.
that
There's
that
no
was.
justice.
I'm just
There's
saying
not much
It
justice.
seems to me that the judge basically decided that because it's a police officer and the superior came in and said, this is how we do it, that was good enough for him. And, you know, I don't think you felt the same way when the superior said that about, you know, the officer that got off. Or,
Well, you know, Alvin, you do need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt.
I was pretty convinced beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right.
But there was no jury, there was just a judge.
Wendy, Wiese, this week it was announced that Enterprise, the largest rental car company in the world, is going to be the new namesake of the Scott Trade Center. Actually, where the Blues play, it'll be the Enterprise Center. So that's pretty good. I like that. But I thought that the media reaction was overkill. I saw, it looked like 24 media representatives at the press conference, and it was such a big story on KMOX Radio, the Post-Dispatch, and beyond. And I just thought, wow, they're just changing the names. This happens all the time. Why did the media get so interested in this?
Because I think a lot of newsrooms lost in the recent just tidal wave of downsizing in terms of media. You've lost your editors, you've lost the people who go to the mat over this kind of thing, and I think sales drive the bus. And that's sort of, I think that's true in every city, but I think it's true especially in a city like St. Louis. We've had a little bit of a lull, and we're, you know, working our way back, trying to claw our way back to the top, and to be relevant. And I think that's, you know, if the sales department says, hey, we're going to make a big deal out of this, then it's going to be a big deal.
And I believe you there. And I will say this. I rented a car at Enterprise in Kirkwood this week. My car, one of the cars was being serviced, got it. Had to keep it an extra day. People there, efficient, great. A big hello to them. But this is beyond reason. And I think it is driven by ad sales, not by actual news.
And we're
I don't
all
know.
fans.
It's a fun story to cover, though. I mean, going to one of these things where a new name, and it all just seems exciting. And a lot of people are hockey fans and go to the old Scott Trade. I forget, what was it before Scott Trade?
Savvis.
Right. And so this is kind of a fun story.
Did you get free food?
Was there free
What?
food?
Did you get free food?
I didn't go.
Actually,
I
I don't
would
think
have been
it's
disappointed if there
overblown.
wasn't something.
I don't necessarily agree that it's that overblown. To tell you the truth, naming in any city, and this happens all the time because everybody sells naming rights now, pretty much every city, including the big ones, when one of their major public buildings, which is what this is renamed, it is a big news story to people. Now, whether you think it's not as important as some of the more important things that are so depressing that we don't want to talk about them every week, but I think that in most cities, I don't think it makes St. Louis look small or anything. I think if this was, in fact, I can think of the one in Philadelphia, where I can't go into what the controversy there's without using PBS language on what it was called when they did the first Union Center over. But the point being that these stories around the country generally do attract interest.
But I would like to know I would like to know what Enterprise is paying. I mean, the terms were not disclosed. I think we have a right to.
I think you're right, but I think it's because I suspect because the public, unlike most of these, the public isn't getting any of the money. I think is probably why they're not disclosed.
Well, okay, if they're paying $5 million a year, that's one thing. If they're paying $500,000 a year, that's another thing. And I
it's
think
just between them and the Blues.
That's fine.
I can't say for sure that other cities react with the same
I think most
verb
I would
that
agree.
we do. It just seems it was a big deal, and it seems to happen a lot, Ray. I mean,
there are instances where it does. I don't think
mean,
this is a good example.
they
of
should
all.
put the signs up with Velcro. It happens so
occasionally
often.
being community civic cheerleaders.
Does the Dome still have a name? Is it like?
Yeah, I think it's America Center now. And when the Edward Jones name
was a
came
big
off,
deal?
it wasn't that big deal. They just said it's
Usually
no longer the
most
Edward
cities
Jones
don't
Dome.
make a deal when it comes off, but I think naming rights get covered pretty
All
well.
right. How about you,
Donnybrook
Ray?
Dome.
Do you think it was a big deal that Marcell Ozuna overslept yesterday and he was, I guess, benched by manager Mike Matheny for just one game? Gosh, a baseball player oversleeping. When was the last time that happened?
That's kind of a fun story, but in particular with his name Z, so they could put Z in the headlines. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, I'm sure there's worse that goes on during the year. I mean, obviously they're going to not suspend him, and they're mad at him for not showing up, and it's embarrassing. He's having a terrible year, and he's been underperforming, and he's been a disappointment. If instead of having 3 home runs, he had 20 home runs now and was leading the league in hitting, the people would have reacted much differently to it than they are. And look, I'm not defending him. He deserves all the scorn he's going to get. But I mean, they just didn't play him for the game, and hopefully they'll go on, and but that's not a big story.
Well, I'll defend him. A 27-year-old guy, and he slept in. I mean, that happens.
Well, you are a professional.
You know, I mean, back in the Babe Ruth, you think he never slept in? The difference is if he showed up in the third inning, they'd have put him in. They would have said, thank goodness you got here, babe. Instead of going, oh my gosh, what did you do? Drink last night? I mean, come on.
I don't know, man. Bill, he got 9 million reasons to show up on time for the game. You know,
He's got 162 games of it.
Well, all right, but now if I'm an NFL player and I sleep through a game and I miss, that's
different.
1/16 of the season.
Now let me ask you,
see, but I'm
is he paid $9 million a year?
Yes.
And so can't you put up 2 alarm clocks if you're paid $9 million? You know,
You could
redundancy.
pay somebody to be your mother, to come into your room and jostle you awake.
I
mean,
will say
Maybe
this.
not your mother.
Okay, I will say this. That game was a 12:35 or something like
Right.
that. If I'm the Cardinals, everybody gets a wake-up call when we play a game at 12:35 in the morning. Not just all 25
PM.
guys get up. Okay, it's a shame that you might have to do that, but I would do that.
But and at the risk of being the grumpy old lady in her, house coat on the lawn, telling everybody to get off her lawn. It really rubbed me the wrong way when Matheny said, "Oh, it's human. It's just human." Because that, you've got coaches of little league teams who are saying, "Look, this is a kind of dedication that you have to have." And I don't have an athletic fiber in my entire body, but I know from experience and knowing athletes that that's how they set it up for young people. That if you play by the rules, if you do your very best instead of, yeah, you know what? He's a $9 million player, and he's overslept in Miami, but everybody kind of looked the other way. Yeah, he was benched. Right. And I'm not saying we should execute him in the town square. I'm just saying I would like a stronger reaction from the manager of the Cardinals.
I think that's a fair comment.
I think he could say this is unacceptable, and it won't be tolerated, period.
Well, I think that's a fair comment. And I'm the one saying it's no big deal because I think it's no big deal, but he is a professional athlete, and it's hard to remember the last time a professional athlete overslept from a game. So I'm not saying I think you're absolutely right that Mike Matheny could have struck a little more of a little stronger tone.
Authoritarian.
But having said that,
Right. Yeah.
I don't think in the long run it's a big deal.
First
and
of
I
all-
think one game.
And he
is
talked to the press, too.
Right.
I mean, so it isn't like he was hiding.
Yeah.
And Ben Frederickson wrote a very nice column about it. And,
Right.
And
think could have been
Well,
But I'm
but
thinking-
then
I'm
here's the
thinking
thing that the press assumes that he overslept. I mean, oversleeping is like eating your kid's home or your dog eating your homework. I mean, it's like the excuse. Oh, where were you? I overslept.
What do you think?
And we just assume that
What
that's
do you
what
think he was
happened.
doing? Robbing a bank?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
His navigation system failed on the way to
Who
the
knows?
team. What do you
But
think
the
it
thing
was?
about Matheny, though, the reason he said that is because he probably chewed him out in his office behind closed doors, and then to the press that Matheny and other players really don't care for that much. They're unnecessary evils. He probably was just saying, look, we're all together. It's not a big deal, and the guy's a great guy.
I think Wendy's right, though, that he should have just said, this is not acceptable, it's not going to happen again, and move on.
Yeah,
I don't think
don't-
it's a big deal, but I don't think
He didn't
it's
need-
okay
the guy
to
didn't need
pat him
be
on
a-
the head.
I'm not saying Matheny needed to play pinata with the guy, but
Right.
at least to say, and he didn't have to be foaming at the mouth,
maybe he
but
said-
just to say, hey, look, he's a big league player. There are big league expectations,
Yeah.
and number one is showing up on time.
Right.
I
Oh,
think-
by the
I
way,
think that's
our
right.
number 4 hitter in the lineup didn't play today because he overslept.
And what happened?
That's-
What was the outcome of the game?
Yeah, and we lost.
Well,
I'm kind of not happy about
right,
that.
that's right. I agree. But
Well, he may not have been happy.
All right.
Hey, by the way, just a quick update on a story we had a couple of weeks ago. The nurses in the Justice Center may not get those pay raises thanks to County Executive Steve Stenger, who sided with Chucky B this week and decided that those pay raises coming out of Prop P or public safety money would be inappropriate, Alvin, Reid. And were you a little surprised that Stenger took my side? As you recall, in a recent Donnybrook, I was the only panelist who said those nurses may deserve an increase, but not out of the public safety bond measure.
Well, nothing surprises me coming out of the county executive's office. I think he's making a mistake. I think he sized up what's the political damage in doing this, and he said, not much. So, okay, tough nurses. Keep them nursing without a pay raise.
He heard from the police who said that public safety money belongs to us. With all due respect to the nurses, it's not theirs. And they're right, because the voters didn't vote for a pay increase for nurses.
But wait a minute.
They voted
the police
for police.
got their raise. It's not like they were, hey, we're going to take some money back, police officers, and give it to the nurses. It didn't work that way.
Yeah, they've got their raise
They
already.
got their raise. So don't put it on them.
You're
I'm
playing
sure.
fast
No,
and
no,
loose.
the police were very vocal. They came out against this, as you know.
All right, so the
Well,
city police are going to tase me, and
On
the
the
county
wine,
police
on
are
the
going to
wine
tase
line,
you.
did they come out vocally on the wine line? Is that where they came out?
No,
vocally?
no, you heard it on the radio, and you read it in the paper,
Well,
that
and
the police union was against using public safety money for purposes other than public safety, and they're absolutely right.
I disagree with Steve Stenger on this, although I think he's capable of doing, and I don't,
Yeah,
I
no.
usually agree with him, but I disagree with him.
Mark the date.
I disagree with him. I think he's capable of doing his own thinking. I don't think it was because somebody told him what to do.
Oh, no, I
But-
absolutely think
well,
somebody
okay.
told him this.
I think he can decide for himself. Having said that, I disagree because I will not support your efforts to malign our
Nurses.
caregivers.
Okay.
I agree.
Bill McClellan, the city of Berkeley now has a rule that you can have 3 pets per household. They're moving it to 2. You support that, don't you?
No, of course not. I think you need to draw the line somewhere, but 3 is not enough. I mean, I've often had 3. I had 3 dogs, and I've had 2 dogs and a cat. 3 animals is not too much anywhere, and I don't know what Berkeley's thinking about.
What are they raising? I mean, they're raising it what from like $1 to $2. If you really
For the fee.
for the fee, right? And they say this is a public health issue, and so I mean, if this is the way, and I'm sure that there has been a great deal of research and thought and analysis going into this new policy, so I stand with the government of Berkeley on this.
I do not stand with the government of Berkeley
Thank you,
because
Alvin.
I have had a dog and 2 cats. I've had 3 cats, and I really don't feel like I'm breaking the law by having them. It's
okay,
also
what if somebody wants 3 Clydesdales on their lawn?
well,
Alvin?
but
Is that
you
okay
can't have
in
a horse,
Berkeley?
though.
Right.
See, all right. Here's the deal. It's playing yourself down. Berkeley is admitting to the world, well, we don't have a lot of people with big houses and big yards and all that, but that's not right. See, if we lived in a different community where we had big houses and big yards, we could have maybe as many pets as we wanted to. So I think it's discriminatory. I think if people want to shelter animals, no time for that. Now, if a municipality wants to say you can't have a pit bull, maybe I might be with that. But yeah.
Oh,
What about
see?
the rule that said that if you got a dog chained outside, Berkeley is going to pick it up? In other words, they don't want dogs chained outside.
People-
Well, that might be considered cruelty. I don't know what to say about that. But let's look at the housing code in Berkeley, where you can probably have 17 people living
know
in a
about that.
3-bedroom
But I think
apartment.
that's a good question.
Right.
I think there's a material difference between what the city's policy is about outside your house and the number of animals inside of it. And I'm not suggesting it's an unlimited number inside, but what's outside your house has much more of an impact on your neighbors and the neighborhood than whether you have 2 or 3 cats inside. So it's not like it should be unlimited, but I generally agree with being really lenient unless there's a clear public safety problem.
Right.
I don't. And
Let me say something about Alvin's 17 people.
I
in the
was being
house.
facetious.
You know,
Please.
I've talked to so many people over the years who talk about like their grandparents were here and we grew up. There were 12 of us in one house, and I think, well, yeah, but you wouldn't want to live next to you anymore. I mean, we've changed so much that way.
Right. And I was
we
being
wouldn't want to live with our
facetious.
grandparents anymore.
I was
But
being
I-
facetious.
Right.
But I bet you more people are probably allowed to live at a residence than maybe you and I
I think
would
we'd
say.
see a lot fewer incidents of violence if grandparents did live with families.
Hey, Wendy, I want to ask you about Starbucks. This week, the company that has 8,000 cafes or restaurants in the United States announced that anyone will be able to sit in a Starbucks and use the facilities as long as he or she isn't sleeping or dealing drugs.
Or
Now-
doing drugs, too. Yeah.
Or doing drugs.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess here's the question, because we were talking about this in St. Louis, where the Reverend Larry Rice wanted access to restaurants and pubs and other places to use the facilities. I guess this is a victory for Larry Rice. The homeless in downtown St. Louis will be able to use the Starbucks. Do you think this is going to work out?
I don't think it's going to be I mean, I think they will I think Starbucks will do everything they can to to help this along, to facilitate this arrangement, but I don't think in the long run it's going to work out.
Right.
Because this is if they're in the business of selling coffee, they're in the business of selling pastries. They're not in the business of being a social service agency. And I think that those two just cannot coexist. I think it's a wonderful thought. I have a friend of mine who calls a Starbucks his North County office, and I think it's been wonderful that they have treated people with such dignity. But I think there is always going to be someone who is going to take advantage of the situation, and that will make it ultimately impossible for Starbucks to.
And I don't know where I'm at with Starbucks' decision, but I would say to Starbucks and other powerful entities to get down there to City Hall and say, you need to take care of this problem. Now, you need some facilities for the people that are, homeless in the downtown area, so we don't have to deal with this. And I'll tell you something else. I would tell the city, whatever my business permit is, you got to knock $100 off that or something, or else I'm changing.
least.
Got a minute to go.
But you can't blame City Hall. I mean, this is corporate Starbucks who said, okay, anybody who wants to come
no,
and
I
sit
agree.
in there can do it. And when you're in an area where there's a lot of homeless people and you say anybody can come in here and sit in inclement weather, good for you, but I think you're right, Wendy. It makes it a social service.
And I
agency.
mean, in addition
I think
to-
it remains to be seen whether it's going to work out. I do think that every time we talk about homelessness, we should be talking about permanent housing solutions instead of all these kind of more interesting issues.
Window dressing.
But I think it's like 50-50. I think it either is going to go where it could turn out really poorly, or it could be something that's just a nah, and we don't even think about it.
All right,
I don't
okay.
think it's going to work out.
Well, we'll see. Hey, thanks for watching, and we encourage your letters to KETC 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL, because Raymond and I are going to be reading them during your turn, which is just a few moments away. So everybody else will see you next week at this time. Thanks for joining us, and don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible through the generous support of the members of KETC.